Welcome to Lexicology, the study of words. Having mastered at least one language, you use words every day, but you may not have thought much about how they're organized or where they came from. In this course, we'll look more deeply into language and words and see how they work. You already know a lot about words, and there are many things you don't even know that you know. In this course, you'll learn about English words and how they've changed and developed over time. You'll gain a new perspective on your language, and you'll also learn why linguists study words and how they do it. Why would someone other than a linguist want to study words? A typical university student can really benefit from learning more about words, how they work, and where they come from. Studying words will help you with your reading comprehension. You'll learn new words and, more importantly, you'll gain the ability to figure out many words that you encounter. Knowing more about words will help your speaking and writing. You'll be able to express yourself more fully and with more subtlety. A large vocabulary is the hallmark of a truly educated person. Truth is, you may be judged by your vocabulary whether you like it or not. The language and vocabulary that you use reveal your identity and personality traits. You are what you speak. In 2008, Flynn examined the vocabulary size of preschoolers by social class. He found that the vocabulary of preschoolers was influenced by their early learning experience. The children of professionals had vocabularies of more than 2,000 words compared to the children of parents on public aid, who averaged about 600-word vocabularies. The graph reveals how early exposure to a wide variety of words gives these preschoolers a leg up as they begin their educations. It's clear that the vocabularies of these preschoolers, and presumably their parents, correlate with their social status. As a sociolinguist, one of the things I find interesting about words is their social use. The words we use are created in a social world through our contact with others. Our vocabulary, or what linguists call our lexicon, reflects all of the social and political and technological influences that we encounter every day. New words are born, old words die, and a lot of words keep showing up again and again. Sometimes they're recycled with new meanings. Technology influences our lexicon. As we invent new things, we need new words. A recent example is this device that was invented a few years ago. I really wasn't sure what this thing was going to be called. It had a lot of different names when it first came out, and you probably have a name for it. Some of the names that were coined when it first appeared were USB, thumb drive, jump drive, key drive, memory stick, flash drive, pencil drive. I kept track of the names that I heard around me since I was curious about which one was going to win out in the end. My experience has been that most people now call this device a USB or a flash drive. My guess is that this device will go extinct before we settle on one particular word for it. Alas, technology moves very quickly. I think we can agree that it's good to know many words. But what does it really mean to know a word? We know words in many different ways. There are different levels to our knowledge. Let's start with not knowing a word at all. I never heard of it. An example is probably the word defenestration. Most people have not heard this word and could say with confidence, I've never heard of it. But there are other words that you've heard occasionally, but you're not sure you could define them. An example of such a word might be austerity. We hear this word often in the news, but if someone said, "Can you define this word for me?" you might not be able to. Another level of word knowledge is when you can recognize a word in context, or you might be able to tell by how someone uses it or in the tone of their voice. An example of this might be from the phrase, "Don't patronize me." You may have a sense of what this means in context, but can you define the word patronize? Sometimes we use words that we can't really explain very well. An example for me might be the word notwithstanding. I suppose I can explain it, but my explanation would involve examples instead of a simple definition. At the other extreme from our mystery word defenestration is a fluent knowledge of a word. This kind of word you use often and confidently, you know how it's used, and you can define it easily. An important part of this course is making you more aware of words and language around you. You'll be quizzed on some vocabulary words each week, but you should look up any words you don't recognize. Do you know the meaning of defenestration or patronize? For now, I'm not going to try to define the term word. We'll use our intuition about what a word is. Later in the course, we'll come up with a more formal definition. To begin to refine our thinking, let's look at some facets of word knowledge. First of all, in this class, we're considering the spoken form of a word. Linguists refer to this as the phonology of a language. We'll see later that the sounds of language can be described in great detail. All the languages of the world share an inventory of sounds that linguists refer to as phonemes. These are the sounds of speech, and we'll look at them more closely later. As an aside, here's a word that has no pronunciation. That brings us to our second feature of words. For us, as literate speakers of English, we know a written form of our language. As you know, not all languages have the same written form or orthography, and of course, not all languages even have a written form. Here are words written in 3 different orthographies. The first is in Thai, the second in Chinese, and the third in Russian. I'll leave it to you to figure out what that word is. A third facet of word knowledge is its meaning or its reference. We have the thing we want to talk about, we have its representation in sound, and we have its orthographic representation. We'll talk about meaning in more detail later in the course, but for now, you should know that units of meaning in linguistics are called morphemes. A fourth thing we know about words is their semantics. We know what a concept means and what a word refers to, as well as how to use it in our grammar. We know that a word's meaning is flexible in the context of a conversation. We also know very subtle features of words. We know what words are appropriate to use in different situations. I'll use a very different register when I'm talking in a job interview than I will when I'm shooting pool with my friends. Register is an important piece of word knowledge. Using the appropriate register can be very helpful in making the right impression. Collocation is an important feature of our word knowledge. In English, we have many phrasal verbs in which a verb is associated with a preposition to give a particular meaning. For example, the verb to make up uses 2 words to arrive at a single meaning, so we can make up a story. Collocation can also be thought of more broadly. For example, the word flex is almost always associated with the use of muscles or part of the body. This type of knowledge is something that we take for granted as native speakers of a language. Word association is another feature of words that native speakers take for granted. A fluent speaker of a language can come up with chains of association. Much like some kind of psychological test, we're able to come up with words that are related to other words, and we do this quite easily as native speakers. Another important part of our word knowledge is how a word is used within the grammar of a language. The grammar, or what linguists call the syntax of English, is the order of words in well-formed sentences. When we truly know a word, we know its position and its function in a grammatical sentence. Even if a sentence such as this one doesn't seem quite right due to its meaning, we still recognize it as following the rules of English grammar. The adjectives, nouns, verbs, and adverbs are all in the right place. Finally, we recognize that many words are made up of smaller components. Basic units of meaning in a language are called morphemes. The study of these units and how they work in a language is called morphology. Much of lexicology is based on the fact that we can recognize smaller meaning components within words. So even the word lexicology can be broken into smaller meaning units. We get lexiko from Greek. This has the meaning speech or word. And we clearly recognize ology. We see this all the time in the university. Archaeology, sociology, psychology, entomology. And we recognize that this morpheme means the study of something. So lexicology is the study of words. You'll get pretty good at identifying morphemes as you progress in this course. In general lexicology, researchers study the concept of words across many languages, what words have in common, and how they vary. In this course, we'll focus on English. This is what we call special lexicology. We do this not because English is somehow the most special language, but instead because it's the language we happen to share. Many of the principles that we will learn in this class can also be applied to other languages, but that's for another class. You now have a better idea of what lexicology is and what aspects of words we'll be examining. As you gain more expertise in the analysis of words, you'll find that English is an endless source of interesting puzzles to be solved.